The second controversy, a little less halacha l'maisa to you and I than the other controversy, which has to do with sunrise and sunset, and they'll get to everybody. This is the controversy which started really with the keter, aram, tzova. As many of you know, in Aleppo, the Syrian community had for centuries, more than centuries, over 1,000 years, they have a keter, aram, tzova. What is that? That is a manuscript of Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, which, according to their Messiah, comes from Ben Osher. Ben Osher is yet from the original Gedolim in Messiah, the experts in Messiah, quoted by the Rambam, who lived in Tveria back in the time of the Gainim. And he was an expert, and he wrote a text of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, which is the text. Now you're going to tell me, what do you mean the text? Different versions? There aren't really different versions as a nogea to me and you. The differences are basically in Malay and Chaser, when a chaylam sound has a vav and when it doesn't, and in the way things are written in Torah and Nevi'im and Ksuvim. Let me give you one example of the present tumul that's tumbling now. As you know, we read Shiras Devaira as the Haftarah for Parshas Mishalach. Many shuls read from a klaf. How is Shiras Devaira written in a klaf? Is it written the same as everything else, just straight? Or is it written like Shiras Hayam, in the form of words, space, words, and space, word, space, word, space, words, Ariach Hagabi Leveina, in a form which is a poetic form of writing? Now it's interesting, if you have at home an old tikkun, a tikkun that you had as a boy, I say dating back to the 70s or the 80s, and that tikkun has Shiras Devaira in the back, the odds are that that tikkun will have Shiras Devaira written in the klaf, the way it's written there, as a normal writing, just written straight across, without any type of a change for the fact that it's a shira. The tikkun that we used as a boy, that I used as a boy, I think it was called the Mishar tikkun, had it that way. If you look today at the tikkun, you'll find two different, you know that there's been an explosion of many tikkuns that have been printed recently. Many of them, most of them, have it written as a shira. Where does this come from? The keter, aram, tzova, which was today, which was in Aleppo. As I say, it was in Aleppo probably for 1,000 years. It was burned in 1948 to celebrate the establishment of the state of Israel. The Syrians burnt down the shul in Aleppo, Rahman al-Islam, and a lot of this keter was destroyed. As a matter of fact, Kamat, the whole Chamisha Chumshei Torah till Devarim Chav Ches was destroyed. Some of the Megillas were destroyed, but the middle, most of Nevi'im is intact. And there, the Shira is written differently. The same thing for Shiras David, Perek Chav Dalet of Shmuel Beis. Also, there's an argument there which Shira form it should have. And now began a great debate. In 1996, the Chorev Tanakh was printed, many shuls have it. That was based on the keter, aram, tzova, together with other manuscripts where the keter, aram, tzova doesn't exist anymore. And that was supposed to be the final authoritative way Nach should be written. And oh boy, did it start a tumult. It started a tremendous tumult. Placards went up denouncing it, writing against it. There's a tshuva from Rabbi Yashiv, which is printed in the first Kaivetz Tshuvas, Tshuva Kuf Yud Gimel, in which he writes, who says that keter, aram, tzova is really from Ben Asher? Who says, how can you change a Messiah based on that? Rav Nosson Gestetner, in the 10th volume of his Lahiris Nasan, has a piece in which he points out differences between the keter, aram, tzova, and what we know Ben Asher held. And therefore he also writes not to rely on it. And it became a big tumult, placards, books, letters, articles in the journals against this keter, aram, tzova, against using it. Then, and this happens sometimes in Yerushalayim, the pendulum swung back. There are people who spoke up for the covet of the keter, aram, tzova. In particular, there was one Yid, Reb David Yitzchaki, a Talmud Chacham from Kail Chazaynish, who wrote, published, and it's interesting, he wrote a sefer on something else. On Luach Eresh, he reprinted Luach Eresh, and he's so involved in this tumult that on page 1, he has a photostat of Reb Chaim Kanievsky writing about the first people, Shekerheim, Kezevu, that the whole thing is a lie, and it's not true, and it is the right thing, and you should rely on keter, aram, tzova. And it became a tumult one way and then the other way. It tumbled back and forth, back and forth. Very fascinating to learn the different things. What's interesting is there are nothing Gestetner who had found discrepancies between keter, aram, tzova and certain Messiahs about Ben Asher was lied to. Some of the discrepancies are just not true. They're just not true. This Rav Yitzchaki wrote a letter to him, which was published in a journal, a yisroel journal, showing the discrepancies are not true. That's not so. That he was misled. And it tumbled back and forth, a tremendous tumult, Talmidei Chachamim on both sides. What's interesting is that, again, you have here an area of Torah in which typically, normally, nobody would bother, no one would get involved, no one would look. And here you sit down and you study a little about what they wrote. If you can get a hold of it, there are two pamphlets. One entitled Messiah and one entitled Ashurenu. Which one is for the keter, aram, tzova? Ashurenu, Ashur, is Syria. Ashurenu defends the keter, aram, tzova. And Messiah says, no, our Messiah is more. Each is a small pamphlet. You can skip the first 20 pages of polemics and get to the Torah. And it's just fascinating to read. The Machlaiksim, the Chalukei Deis, the Maramachaimis from Shas. It's just an incredible thing to read. This was the tumult that took place. An interesting side issue. There's a Yid, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Hafman, brilliant man, who took the other side. Rabbi Yitzchaki defended the keter, aram, tzova. And this Rav Hafman was held not to rely on the keter, aram, tzova. And each one seemed to get letters from the same Gedolim this way and that way. The truth is, if you read all the letters carefully, the Gedolim are saying, in areas where we have a Messiah, we shouldn't change it because of the keter. In areas where we don't have a Messiah, so we should use the keter to do whatever we should do. But each side seems to take his side. What's interesting is, this Rav Avram Yitzchak Hafman had written a sefer on Digduk, which I had found in the library in our Sameach. I wanted a copy of it. It's out of print. I went to his house to try to get a copy from him. He said he only has 2 or 3 copies left. He's not giving them away. And then I discussed a few things with him that I was mesupik about. Tremendous Talmud Chacham. Looks like a real Yerushalmi Yid. But in the middle he says, if you're comfortable with English, I can talk English. He's a Brooklyn boy. He was once a Brooklyn boy. And there now. I saw in the beginning he was on guard. And then I realized. Because as soon as I finished asking what I wanted, he said, well, I can't give you that, but I can give you this. And he took out a letter, and another letter, an article, on things that had to do with this tumbling over the keter, aram, tzova. And to me it was just fascinating how he was like Raisha Verubai, totally into it. This is a second tumult in Yerushalayim. Now I mentioned these two tumult in Yanim. They're important Yediyas, things that we should know. They're both areas in which people generally don't have Yediyas. The keter, aram, tzova, I didn't fill you in on much of what the tumbling is about. If I can tell you, every time I see a tikkun, I go into shul and someone brought in a new tikkun, the first thing I'm curious about is I turn to Shiras Devaira and I look to how Shiras Devaira is printed. Because it's just an interesting thing that some are this way, some are that way, back and forth. And who knows where along the line in the Messiah the Tutzadadim came up. I'd like to explain and try to give an understanding of what it means when there's